Hello everyone, this is Tudo. Split Fiction has been getting overwhelmingly positive reviews. Many of my friends even think it is more fun than It Takes Two. But after playing through both, I still personally prefer It Takes Two. Just to be clear up front, both are fantastic games, each with their own strengths in different areas. I simply feel that It Takes Two does a better job in the aspects that matter more to me. Of course, you're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a friendly discussion about what you liked or didn't like about each game. Today, I will be talking about why I prefer It Takes Two, focusing on the choice of theme, gameplay design, and level design. It Takes Two uses the perspective of those exploring their own home. It is a clever choice. It's both familiar and unfamiliar. Players can easily understand the game's setting while also finding it fresh and surprising. Once you become a doll, the changing scales make ordinary things feel eerie or magical. Everyday objects take on new functions, and you can finally enter spaces you've always known and been curious about but never had access to. This shift in perspective invites players to see everyday life through a different lens, drawing parallel between the macro and micro worlds. It builds a small universe governed by its own rules, yet still grounded in our real-world surroundings. That's why I think it makes the theme so cool. Each chapter in It Takes Two is distinct, based on different areas of the house. The themes are tightly integrated with their environments, making each level memorable in its own way. Split Fiction, on the other hand, explores a sci-fi and fantasy world-switching theme. At first glance, it's also very cool. Immersing yourself in fully imagined fictional worlds is a great concept. The contrast between the sci-fi and fantasy aesthetics is striking too. But after finishing the game, I felt the settings leaned heavily on well-worn tropes: cyberpunk, giant robot battles, etc. The differences within the sci-fi and fantasy zones were relatively minor. You could swap a cyber ninja into the robot world and it wouldn't feel that out of place. I get why Split Fiction made this choice though. Sci-fi and fantasy are farther away from daily life, so player comprehension takes more effort. To ease that, Split Fiction uses familiar genre conventions to communicate its themes clearly. It is a smart approach, but also one that makes the world feel a bit modular to me. There were lots of cool elements, but not many surprising ones that exceeded my expectations like in It Takes Two. It Takes Two builds gameplay around each level's theme. The core concept of a level is transformed into a game mechanic, making character abilities tightly aligned with the environment and intuitive to use. For example, in the toolbox level, one player uses a hammer and the other nails. In the tree level, there's zap and fire. These powers feel natural in the context of the challenge. Because these abilities are inspired by real life, players already have expectations about how they work. So if you've used a hammer or nails before, you'll naturally understand their functions, fixing and breaking. So players are encouraged to actively think about how to use their abilities to solve puzzles, rather than just looking for visual clues or interactive objects in the scene. In Split Fiction, the design seems to go to the opposite direction. It starts with gameplay mechanics and then wraps them in sci-fi or fantasy themes. You can see that several abilities are essentially skins of one another. For example, Mil's robot powers in her subconscious level can transform into different forms. Gliding like a parachute, which is similar to the fairy's glide, turning into a bow like the otter, or hacking to create paths, similar to Groot's space altering ability. These mechanics are fundamentally about movement and toggling level states. They're dressed up differently depending on whether it is a robot or a transformer, but they don't feel as deeply integrated with the level themes. And since the mechanics aren't as intuitive, I sometimes couldn't predict what my abilities would do. Take Zoe's whip power in the path building level, which is similar to the hammer nail level in It Takes Two. In It Takes Two, I could immediately grasp that nails fix things and hammers break them. So when I figured out how to use the nails to create a path, I felt clever, like I'd come up with a solution myself. In Split Fiction, I couldn't predict what Zoe's whip would do, so I ended up trying and erroring based on the game's cues. I still solved the puzzle, but it felt more like following the hints than true discovery. This difference in design philosophy also affects how the characters interact. In It Takes Two, character abilities are paired and synergistic, sometimes even with building combo mechanics. This naturally encourages cooperation. In Split Fiction, abilities are more like subtypes within a broader category, and the collaboration between players tend to be driven by the level design rather than the abilities themselves. Let's compare It Takes Two's tree level to Split Fiction's dragon level. Both involve two players working together to destroy obstacles. But in It Takes Two, May triggers explosions using Cody Sap, meaning one player's action directly influences others' aiming and timing. That's organic collaboration. In Split Fiction, each dragon handles a different element, metal or crystal, and players interact with several objects in sequence. There's no real synergy between characters, so it lacks that two swords, one strike feeling that It Takes Two delivers. Because It Takes Two builds mechanics around a core idea, each ability evolves in different ways across levels, creating a rich variety of gameplay. Let's go back to the tree level again. The core mechanic is sap. It's sticky and heavy, so it can lower platforms. It can be used to power bows through reaction force. Chemically, it explodes when ignited, so fire controls when sap exists. Explosions also create kinetic energy and chain reactions. When I discovered the chain reaction mechanic, I was blown away. Not only was it a fun surprise within the theme, but it also didn't require new controls. I'd had the power all along. That moment of, wait, it can do that, followed by, of course it can, was so satisfying. Throughout the level, aside from rolling the bow, all my inputs were just shoot the sap and ignite it. But I got so many unique gameplay experiences from just that. In contrast, Split Fiction often introduces new content or mechanics on top of existing ones to keep things fresh. For instance, the dragon's powers unlock gradually as it grows. Each stage brings new controls, or the Groot's terrain altering, or the robot's hacking are both complex mechanics that add entirely new 3C systems. It is fun, but it feels more like I'm being taught new mechanics rather than discovering them organically. In It Takes Two, the surprise comes from realizing new possibilities with tools that I already had. In the end, I prefer It Takes Two because it feels more cohesive. Everything, the theme, the gameplay, the level design, fits together seamlessly. Its clever setting provided tons of inspiration for intuitive mechanics, and those mechanics were refined into rich, varied gameplay under a single concept. Because every part of the game works towards the same goal, the overall experience feels more complete. Even in its linear levels with fixed solutions, I felt like I was actively participating in a tiny world just beside our own.